The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What they saw made everyone silent with horror. Where the Volani space station should have been, there was only wreckage. Huge pieces of metal drifted in the dark, slowly spinning. Some pieces were so big they had their own gravity, pulling smaller debris into strange, twisted balls of junk. "Dear God," whispered Navigator Ara from her station on the Soul's Pride. "The whole system is a graveyard." Admiral Somin stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at the destruction. She had seen many battles, but nothing like this. "How many people lived here?" she asked quietly. 50 million on the stations alone," Ara answered. "Maybe another 100 million on the planets." Captain Tae Young of the destroyer Swift Retribution was leading the scout ships through the debris field. His ship moved carefully between the floating wreckage. His crew scanned everything, looking for survivors or clues about what had happened. "This wasn't a battle," Tae Young reported over the radio. "Battles leave different kinds of wreckage. This looks like someone took the stations apart piece by piece." On his bridge, Tae Young watched the sensor readings. The metal has been cut, not blasted. Clean cuts, like they were harvesting the stations for materials. Admiral Somin felt a cold chill run down her back. "Keep scanning. Look for any life signs." For 2 hours, the human ships searched through the debris. They found pieces of Volani ships, but no survivors in space. Then Communications Officer Yoon Ju on the Defiant Thunder picked up something. "Commander Hyun-woo, I'm getting a weak signal from the 4th planet. It's very faint, but it might be a distress beacon." Hyun-woo looked at his tactical display. The 4th planet was still there, but something was wrong with it. Where cities should have shown up as bright spots, there was only darkness. "Take us in," he ordered. "But stay ready for anything." The Swift Retribution and 2 other destroyers flew toward the planet. As they got closer, the full horror became clear. The planet's surface was covered with huge holes, like someone had dug out enormous chunks of earth and rock. The oceans were smaller than they should have been. Even the atmosphere was thinner. "They're mining the whole planet," said sensor operator Woo Bin. His voice shook as he read the numbers. "They've taken 30% of the landmass. The oceans are down by half, but the scanners still showed life signs. Weak and scattered, but definitely there. People were still alive down there." "Launch the Marines," Admiral Somin ordered over the fleet channel. "Full rescue operation." Lieutenant Yu Jin led the first wave of Marines down to the planet's surface. She was tough and smart, the kind of officer who never left anyone behind. Her transport ship landed in what used to be the capital city of the Volani homeworld. The city was gone. In its place was a hole in the ground so deep that they could not see the bottom. But nearby, hidden in caves and underground tunnels, the scanners had found life signs. Yu Jin and her team worked their way through the tunnels. The air was thin and dirty. Emergency lights flickered on the walls, running on backup power that was almost dead. They found the first group of survivors in what used to be a subway tunnel. 20 Volani huddled together in the dark, weak from hunger and fear. When they saw the human Marines, some of them started to cry. "Please," said one of the Volani, an older female with pale blue skin and large, frightened eyes. "You have to get us out of here. They might come back." "Who?" asked Yu Jin. "Who did this to you?" "The Ravagers," the Volani whispered. "They came from the dark between the stars. So many ships we could not count them all. They did not try to talk to us. They just started taking everything." Yu Jin helped the survivors to their feet. "How many of you are left?" "Maybe 200,000, the Volani said. "We hid when we could, but they took most of us." "Took you where?" The Volani shuddered. "To their ships, to be processed." Yu Jin did not ask what that meant. She could guess, and it made her sick. The rescue operation went on for hours. Marines found survivors hidden all over the planet. Some were in deep caves. Others had hidden in the ruins of buildings. All of them told the same story. The Ravagers had come without warning. They had not tried to communicate or negotiate. They had simply started harvesting everything they could find. "They take the people first," explained one survivor, a young Volani male who had escaped from one of the processing ships. "They sort us like materials. Some go to one place, some to another. I saw them taking children to different ships than adults." The human Marines worked harder, knowing that every minute counted. If the Ravagers came back, everyone would die. Then they did come back. Commander Sung Ho was on the bridge of the carrier Cloudwalker when his sensors detected the incoming ships. At first he thought his equipment was broken. "Sir," called out sensor operator Minho, I'm showing contacts coming out of hyperspace. Lots of contacts. How many? Sung-Ho asked. Min-Ho stared at his screen. 200 ships, sir. Maybe more. They're not like anything in our database. Admiral So-Min received the report on her flagship. All ships, battle stations. Recall the Marines immediately, but there was not enough time. The Ravager scout fleet was already moving toward the planet at high speed. Sung-Ho launched his fighters without waiting for orders. Pilot Nari led the first squadron, her ship cutting through space like a silver arrow. Behind her flew pilot Wu Bin and 30 other fighters, the best pilots in the human fleet. Remember, Nari said over the radio to her squadron, we don't know what these things can do. Stay sharp and watch each other's backs. The first contact between humans and Ravagers happened 50,000 kilometers above the dying Villani homeworld. Nari's fighters met the alien scouts head-on. The Ravager ships were strange. They looked almost alive, with curved surfaces that seemed to pulse and move. They flew in perfect formation, like they were all controlled by the same mind. They're not reacting to our maneuvers, reported Wu Bin as he rolled his fighter to avoid enemy fire. It's like they already know what we're going to do. The alien weapons were different too. Instead of laser beams or missiles, they fired streams of something that looked like liquid metal. When it hit a human fighter, the metal seemed to eat through the hull. Nari lost 2 pilots in the first minute of fighting, but she noticed something important. They're fighting like a computer program, she told her squadron. Same moves, same patterns. But if we do something unexpected? She pulled her fighter into a wild spinning dive that no military manual would recommend. The Ravager ships that had been tracking her suddenly seemed confused. Their shots went wide, that's it, she shouted. They can't handle random moves. Break formation and go crazy. The human pilots stopped flying like they had been trained and started flying like maniacs. They rolled and spun and dove in ways that made no tactical sense. The Ravager ships, trying to predict their movements, began to miss more and more shots. But there were still too many of them. For every Ravager ship the humans destroyed, 2 more took its place. Down on the planet, Lieutenant Yu Jin got the recall order. All Marines back to the ships now. Leave everything except the survivors. The evacuation turned into a race against time. Transport ships landed and took off as fast as they could, packed with Villani refugees. Some transports took enemy fire as they climbed toward space, but the human pilots pushed their engines past the safety limits to get away. The last transport left the surface just as the Ravager ships reached orbit. On board, Yujin counted heads. 200,000 Villani survivors saved from a dead world. In space, the human fleet regrouped. Admiral So-Min looked at the tactical display. The Ravager scout fleet had stopped chasing them and was now landing on the planet below. What are they doing? Asked Captain Tae-Young. Navigator Era studied the sensor readings. They're finishing the job, taking what's left of the planet. Engineer Kyung-Soo, monitoring the enemy ships from his position on the Iron Mountain, saw something that chilled his blood. Admiral, those ships are getting bigger. Everyone looked at the display. The Ravager ships were indeed growing, adding new sections made from materials they had taken from the planet's surface. They're not just taking resources, Kyung-Soo said. They're using them to build more ships. That's how they can have so many vessels. Every world they destroy makes their fleet stronger. Admiral So-Min felt the weight of command on her shoulders. They had saved some lives, but they had also seen the true horror of their enemy. The Ravagers were not just conquerors. They were a cancer that grew stronger with every world they consumed. Set course for the next system, she ordered, and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're going to need a lot more ships. As the human fleet jumped back into hyperspace carrying their cargo of refugees, none of them knew that their small victory had been noticed. Deep in the Ravager collective mind, something that might have been curiosity was stirring. These new creatures fought differently than anything the Ravagers had seen before. They would need to be studied, and then destroyed. Admiral So-Min stood on the bridge of Soul's Pride, staring at the sensor display that showed their doom approaching. The main Ravager fleet had arrived, and it was bigger than anyone had imagined. 5,000 ships, reported Navigator Ara, her voice barely steady. Maybe more. They're spread across the entire system. The human fleet had taken position near the asteroid belt of the Kepler 186 system. They had chosen this place to make their stand because Admiral So-Min had a plan. It was a dangerous plan that could get them all killed, but it was the only chance they had. All ships begin deployment, she ordered. Execute formation chaos. Captain Hyunwoo received the order on his destroyer Defiant Thunder. Formation chaos was something new, something that went against everything they had learned in military school. Instead of keeping the fleet together in a strong formation, they were spreading out across the entire system. "Commander," asked his weapons officer Jamin, "are we really going to split up? Against an enemy that has 6 times more ships than we do?" Hyunwoo watched his tactical display as human ships scattered in all directions. Some hid behind asteroids, others took positions near the gas giants and their moons. A few even hid in the shadow of the system's star, where the heat and radiation made sensors almost useless. "Trust the Admiral," he said. "She knows what she's doing." At least he hoped she did. Captain Jin Ho commanded the heavy cruiser Iron Mountain, leading the biggest group of human warships. His force had 20 heavy cruisers and 50 destroyers. Compared to the Ravager fleet, it looked like a handful of pebbles facing an avalanche. "Sir," called out his communications officer, "the enemy is moving. They're coming straight at us in formation." Jin Ho smiled grimly. "Just like we hoped they would." The Ravager fleet moved like a single living thing. Their ships stayed in perfect formation, each one exactly where it should be. They had done this before many times. They would overwhelm the human positions one by one, just like they had done to countless other species. But Admiral Somin was counting on that confidence. "All units," she broadcast to the scattered human fleet, "remember the plan. Wait for my signal." In her command center, communications officer Yoonju sat at a console that looked nothing like normal fleet equipment. Engineer Kyung-soo had built it specially for this battle. It was connected to every human ship in the system through quantum entanglement communicators, devices that could send messages instantly across any distance. "Network is active," Yoonju reported. "All ships are connected." This was the secret weapon Admiral Somin hoped would save them. Every human ship could now share information with every other ship instantly. They could coordinate their movements and attacks in real time, something no enemy would expect from scattered forces. The first Ravager wave hit Captain Jin Ho's position near the 3rd planet. 1,000 enemy ships opened fire at once, filling space with streams of liquid metal and energy beams. It should have been enough to destroy the human force in minutes, but the humans were not where the Ravagers expected them to be. At the last second, Jin Ho's ships had moved. Information from scouts hidden throughout the system had told them exactly where the enemy weapons would fire. The human vessels slipped between the beams of destruction like dancers avoiding raindrops. "Now!" Jin Ho shouted. The human ships fired back, but not at the enemy ships they were fighting. Their weapons targeted specific points in the asteroid belt, points that had been carefully prepared hours earlier. Explosions erupted throughout the belt. Rocks and metal fragments flew in all directions, creating a cloud of deadly debris that spread across the battlefield. The Ravager ships, flying in their perfect formation, could not avoid the storm of stone and steel. "Direct hits on 40 enemy vessels," reported Weapons Officer Jamin from his position on the Defiant Thunder. "They're taking damage." But there were still thousands of Ravagers left, and now they were angry. The alien fleet changed tactics, splitting into smaller groups to attack the scattered human forces. This was exactly what Admiral Somin had been waiting for. "Execute Phase 2, she ordered. All across the system, hidden human ships came alive. Captain Tae-young led his destroyer squadron out from behind an asteroid, striking at Ravager ships that had turned away to attack other targets. Commander Sung-ho launched his fighters from the carrier Cloudwalker, which had been hiding in the atmosphere of a gas giant. Pilot Nari led her fighter squadron in a wild attack run through the middle of a Ravager formation. Her ships twisted and rolled in patterns that seemed random, but were actually coordinated by the quantum communication network. "They can't track us," she reported, as her pilots danced between enemy shots. "Every time they think they know where we're going, we change direction." The battle became chaos exactly as Admiral Somin had planned. Individual human ships in small groups attacked the Ravagers from every direction. No 2 attacks were the same. No pattern could be predicted. The Ravager hive mind, used to fighting enemies that followed logical military tactics, began to struggle. It could not predict what the humans would do next because the humans themselves were making decisions on the spot, reacting to information that was seconds old. On the dreadnought Busan's Vengeance, Weapons Officer Jamin had been given special orders. Instead of trying to destroy as many enemy ships as possible, his job was to create problems for the Ravagers. "Fire solution ready," he reported to his captain. "Execute." The massive guns of the dreadnought fired, but not at enemy ships. The shells exploded in empty space, creating clouds of metal chaff and electromagnetic interference. Ravager ships flying through these clouds found their sensors confused and their communications disrupted. More human ships appeared from hiding places throughout the system. Captain Hyunwoo brought his destroyer squadron out from behind the fourth planet's moon, hitting a group of Ravager ships that had been trying to regroup. "This is working," he told his crew as they watched enemy ships struggle to coordinate their attacks. "They don't know how to fight us." But the Ravagers were learning. Deep in their collective mind, the alien intelligence began to adapt. It started sending ships in random directions, trying to copy the human tactics. It broke its formations into smaller groups and ordered them to attack unpredictably. "Admiral," reported Navigator Ara, "the enemy is changing tactics. They're starting to copy what we're doing." Admiral Somin had expected this. Time for Phase 3. The quantum communication network that connected all human ships suddenly began broadcasting something new. Instead of tactical information, it started sending random electromagnetic noise, patterns of static and interference that made no sense. But the noise was aimed directly at the Ravager ships. Engineer Kyung-soo had discovered something important during their first battle with the aliens. The Ravager hive mind used a form of quantum communication similar to what humans used, but their version was not protected against interference. The random noise from the human ships hit the Ravager network like a virus, spreading from ship to ship through their communication links. Suddenly, individual Ravager vessels found themselves cut off from the collective mind. The results were immediate and catastrophic. Ravager ships that had never operated independently began to panic. Some stopped moving entirely. Others started firing at their own allies, unable to tell friend from enemy without the hive mind to guide them. "Look at that," breathed Captain Jin Ho as he watched a group of Ravager ships begin shooting at each other. "They don't know how to think for themselves." Pilot Woo-bin, flying his fighter through the chaos, saw something even more amazing. "Some of them are just floating there, like they're waiting for orders that never come." Admiral So-min felt a moment of hope. The plan was working better than she had dared to expect, but she knew the Ravagers would adapt to this too eventually. "All ships, press the attack. We may not get another chance like this." The human fleet struck with everything they had. Ships that had been hiding in the outer system rushed in to join the battle. Every weapon fired, every fighter launched, every torpedo found a target. The Ravager fleet, confused and cut off from their collective guidance, could not respond effectively. Thousands of their ships drifted helplessly as the quantum virus spread through their communication network. But even in their confusion, there were still thousands of them. And slowly, some of them began to adapt, learning to function without the hive mind's constant guidance. The battle was far from over. "Sir," called out Communications Officer Yoonju, "I'm detecting new contacts coming out of hyperspace. More Ravagers." Admiral So-min looked at the tactical display. 3 more fleets were arriving, each one as big as the first. The virus had worked once, but the newcomers would be prepared for it. "Signal all ships," she ordered. "Prepare for Phase 4. Captain Hyunwoo received the order and felt his blood turn cold. Phase 4 was the plan they all hoped they would never have to use. "All units scatter and run," came Admiral So-min's voice over the radio. "Execute guerrilla protocol. Make them chase us across the galaxy." The human fleet began to break apart, each ship or small group heading for a different hyperspace jump point. They had hurt the Ravagers badly, but they could not win a straight fight against overwhelming numbers. As his destroyer jumped into hyperspace, Hyunwoo took one last look at the battle zone. Commander Hyunwoo sat in his captain's chair on the bridge of the UES Defiant Thunder. The ship was one of humanity's newest destroyers, fast and deadly. Around him, his crew worked at their stations. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the occasional beep of incoming messages. "Sir, we're getting something strange," said Communications Officer Yoon-ju. She was young but smart, one of the best signal experts in the fleet. Her fingers moved quickly over her control panel. "It's encrypted, but it's not from any human ship." Hyunwoo stood up from his chair. "Put it on the main screen." The large display in front of the bridge flickered. Static filled the screen for a moment, then cleared. The image was bad, broken up, and hard to see. A face appeared. It was not human. The being had large eyes and pale blue skin. Its mouth moved, but the words came out in broken pieces. Help. Please. They are killing us all. The Ravagers. They destroy everything. Please, anyone who can hear this. The signal went dead. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Where did that come from? Hyunwoo asked. Yunju checked her readings. The Volani Republic, sir. 3 star systems away. The signal is old, maybe 2 days. Hyunwoo knew about the Volani. They were traders and peaceful people. They had never caused trouble for anyone. They had never helped humans either, but they were not enemies. Send this to Fleet Command right away, he ordered. Maximum priority. 3 hours later, Hyunwoo stood in the briefing room of the flagship Soul's Pride. Around a large metal table sat the most important officers of the 7th Battle Group. Fleet Admiral So-min sat at the head of the table. She was small but tough, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been fighting space battles longer than most of her officers had been alive. The signal came from the Volani homeworld. Admiral So-min said, "Our long-range sensors show something terrible. Whole planets are going dark. No radio signals, no ship traffic, nothing." Captain Jin Ho of the heavy cruiser Iron Mountain leaned forward. He was a big man with scars on his hands from years of ship repairs. "Admiral, with respect, why is this our problem? The Volani never helped us when we needed it. We have our own colonies to protect." "Because, Captain," said a new voice, "if we let these Ravagers destroy the Volani, who do you think they will come for next?" Everyone turned to look at Navigator Ara. She was the fleet's best expert on alien species and star maps. Her computer pad showed images of destroyed worlds. "I've been studying the attack pattern," Ara continued. "The Ravagers are not just conquering worlds. They are taking everything, metal, water, air, even the people. Look at these pictures." The main screen showed satellite images. Where cities should have been, there were only empty holes in the ground. Where forests should have grown, there was bare rock. The worlds looked like someone had scraped them clean. "They're strip mining entire planets," Ara said. "Taking every useful thing and leaving nothing behind. And look at this pattern." She pointed to a star map. Red dots showed the destroyed worlds. They're moving in a straight line toward the trade routes. If they keep going, they will reach human space in 6 months. The room was quiet. Everyone stared at the map. The red line of destruction pointed right at Earth's outer colonies. Chief Engineer Dong-min spoke up. He was an older man who had built half the ships in the fleet with his own hands. "How many ships do they have?" "We don't know," Admiral So-min said. "But if they can destroy the Volani this fast, it must be a big fleet." "The Volani had good defenses." Captain Jinho shook his head. "Admiral, even if we wanted to help, we only have 800 ships in the entire 7th Battle Group. If these Ravagers are as strong as you say, then we make sure 800 ships are enough." Admiral So-min said firmly, "I've already talked to Earth Command. They're sending everything they can spare. But it will take weeks for reinforcements to reach us." Hyunwoo had been quiet during the meeting, but now he spoke. "Admiral, what if we're too late? What if the Volani are already dead?" Admiral So-min looked at him with those sharp eyes. "Then we make sure no one else dies the same way." She stood up and walked to the star map. "I won't lie to you. This will be dangerous. We don't know what weapons these Ravagers have. We don't know how they fight. But I know one thing." She turned to face her officers. "No one has the right to wipe out entire worlds full of people. Not while the human fleet can do something about it." The meeting broke up an hour later. Orders went out to every ship in the battle group. Weapons were checked and loaded. Engines were pushed to maximum power. Supply ships worked all night to fill every storage bay with food, water, and ammunition. On the Defiant Thunder, Hyunwoo walked through his ship's corridors. His crew was working hard, preparing for battle. In the engine room, young technicians crawled through access tunnels, checking every wire and bolt. In the weapon bays, gunners cleaned their cannons until they shined. "Sir," called out Weapons Officer Jamin. He was loading shells into the ship's main guns. "Are we really going to fight these aliens? The ones that destroyed whole worlds?" Hyunwoo stopped and looked at the young man. Jamin was new to the fleet, fresh from the academy on Mars. He had never been in a real battle. "Yes," Hyunwoo said simply. "We are. But why? The Volani never helped us. Why should we risk our lives for them?" Hyunwoo was quiet for a moment. He thought about his own family back on Earth. His wife and 2 children lived in a small city by the ocean. They were safe now, but if the Ravagers kept moving toward human space, because, he said finally, someone has to. The next morning, the human fleet was ready. 800 ships of all sizes filled the space around the gas giant where they had been waiting. Destroyers like the Defiant Thunder darted between the bigger ships. Heavy cruisers like the Iron Mountain showed off their thick armor and powerful guns. At the center of the formation was the massive dreadnought Busan's Vengeance, the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. Admiral Somin's voice came over the fleet communication system. Every person on every ship heard her words. Attention all vessels. In 5 minutes, we will jump to hyperspace. We are going to help people who have never helped us. We are going to fight an enemy we have never seen. Some of you might not come back, she paused. In the silence, Hyunwoo could hear his own heartbeat. But I want you to remember why we are doing this. We are not doing this for glory. We are not doing this for conquest. We are doing this because somewhere in the dark, people are dying and they asked for help. That's what humans do. We answered the call. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Jump. Space twisted around the human fleet. Stars became lines of light. The ships entered hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would change the galaxy forever. In the command chair of his destroyer, Hyunwoo gripped the armrests and wondered what they would find when they arrived. Behind them, the space around the gas giant was empty and quiet. Ahead of them, war was waiting. The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could fly. The Volani refugees, now safe on human worlds, used their trading networks to tell other species what had happened. For the first time in years, there was hope in the darkness. Admiral Hyunwoo, promoted after Captain Jinho's heroic sacrifice, stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the heavy cruiser New Dawn. Around him, the largest fleet in human history was gathering at the Nexus Gate, a natural hyperspace junction that controlled access to 12 star systems. 200 alien ships joining our formation, reported his communications officer. The Keth Confederacy is sending their entire battle fleet. Hyunwoo watched the tactical display as ships from a dozen different species took positions alongside the human vessels. The crystal beings called Silicari had contributed their advanced sensors. The plant-like Verdani brought ships that could repair themselves during battle. Even species that had been hiding from the Ravagers for years were now willing to fight, but the enemy was not sitting still either. Intelligence officer Min Kyung had been monitoring Ravager communications from her spy ship. What she found was terrifying. Admiral, they're not just adapting to our tactics. They're learning to be unpredictable. Individual Ravager ships are starting to act independently, copying human fighting styles. Admiral So-min, commanding the combined fleet from the super dreadnought Earth's Thunder, studied the reports. The Ravagers had 2 hive ships left, each one now heavily protected and prepared for human tactics. Worse, they had begun using the quantum virus as a weapon against their own disconnected ships, forcing them back into the collective or destroying them. They're eliminating any Ravagers who show signs of independent thought, So-min said grimly. They'd rather kill their own people than let them choose freedom. Engineer Kyung-soo had been working for weeks on humanity's final weapon. Not a bomb this time, but something even more dangerous to the Ravager collective mind. In his workshop aboard the technical ship Innovation, he put the finishing touches on a device that could change the course of the war. It's not a virus, he explained to the gathered fleet commanders. It's more like a vaccine. Instead of destroying the quantum network, it protects individual consciousness from the hive mind's control. The plan was ambitious and risky. They would have to get close enough to both remaining hive ships to deploy the device. But if it worked, every Ravager in the galaxy would suddenly find themselves free to make their own choices. Some of them will keep fighting, warned Navigator Era. But others might choose to stop, and some might choose to help us, added Chief Medical Officer Haewon, who had been working with Ravager prisoners. I've seen what happens when they're cut off from the collective. They're not monsters. They're people who have been enslaved by their own technology. The final battle began at the Nexus Gate. The Ravagers arrived with everything they had left. Over 10,000 ships surrounding the 2 massive hive ships. But this time, humanity was not alone. Pilot Nari led a mixed squadron of human, Keth, and Silicari fighters against the enemy's outer defenses. Her ships danced between laser beams and missile swarms. protected by Silicari energy shields and supported by Keth heavy fighters. "The Alliance is working," she reported as her mixed squadron destroyed a Ravager patrol group, different species fighting as one. Commander Sung Ho brought his carrier through the battle zone, launching wave after wave of fighters from a dozen different worlds. The carrier itself had been modified with alien technology, making it faster and stronger than any ship humanity had built before. But the real battle was happening in the center of the formation, where the two hive ships waited like enormous metal mountains, bristling with weapons and surrounded by their strongest defenders. Admiral Somin knew that a direct assault would fail. Instead, she ordered the strangest battle formation in military history. The combined fleet would attack both hive ships at exactly the same moment, overwhelming their ability to coordinate a defense. "All ships, execute final protocol," she broadcast to the fleet. The Alliance fleet split into two massive formations, each one targeting a different hive ship. At the same time, small groups of stealth ships began their approach, carrying Engineer Kyung-soo's consciousness-freeing device toward the heart of the enemy formation. The battle was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Ships from dozens of worlds fought alongside humanity, each species contributing their unique abilities. Verdani bioships grew new weapons as they fought. Keth vessels shared their shield energy with damaged allies. Human ships coordinated everything through their quantum communication network. Pilot Wu Bin flew his fighter through a storm of enemy fire, heading for the first hive ship. Strapped to his fighter was one of Kyung-soo's devices, a small box that might end the war. "I'm taking heavy fire," he reported as his fighter's shields flared under enemy weapons. "I don't think I'm going to make it." But help came from an unexpected source. A damaged Ravager ship, its connection to the collective mind already severed, moved to protect Wu Bin's fighter. The alien vessel took the shots meant for him, sacrificing itself so the human pilot could complete his mission. "Did you see that?" called out Nari over the radio. "Some of them are already switching sides." Wu Bin reached the first hive ship and deployed Kyung-soo's device. At the same moment, another pilot reached the second hive ship. Both devices activated simultaneously, sending out a quantum signal that raced through the Ravager communication network at the speed of thought. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Across the battlefield, Ravager ships suddenly stopped fighting. Not because they were damaged or confused, but because their crews were experiencing free will for the first time in their lives. Some chose to keep fighting, loyal to their collective mind, but others made different choices. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Yoonju, "I'm receiving surrender signals from over 3,000 Ravager ships. They're asking for protection from their own hive ships." The hive ships themselves began to change. Without the absolute obedience of their crews, they could not function as weapons of war. Some sections stopped working as Ravager technicians refused to maintain them. Other sections were sabotaged by crews who had decided they no longer wanted to be part of a machine that destroyed worlds. But the collective mind was not ready to surrender. The remaining loyal Ravagers fought with desperate fury, trying to recapture or destroy the ships that had broken free. Brother fought brother in a civil war that split the Ravager fleet in half. Admiral Yunwoo found himself in the strange position of protecting former enemies from their own people. "All ships cover the surrendering Ravagers. Don't let the Loyalists destroy them." The battle raged for hours, but slowly the tide turned. More and more Ravager ships chose freedom over slavery to the collective mind. When individual Ravagers saw that they could survive outside the hive mind, more found the courage to break free. The turning point came when one of the hive ships itself began to break apart. Ravager engineers, now thinking for themselves, realized that their ship was built from the processed bodies of millions of murdered people. They could not bear to be part of such a horror. "The first hive ship is powering down," reported sensor operator Minho. "They're shutting down their own weapons." Admiral So-min watched as the massive ship went dark. Around it, hundreds of smaller vessels were also surrendering, their crews choosing to join the growing rebellion against the collective mind. The second hive ship fought to the end, its crew still loyal to the old ways. But surrounded by former allies who had chosen freedom, it could not win. The ship was destroyed not by human weapons, but by Ravagers who had decided that some things were worth fighting against. When the battle was over, the Alliance fleet found itself protecting over 5,000 former Ravager ships. The crews were confused and frightened, experiencing individual thought for the first time, but they were free. Admiral So-min addressed the combined fleet from the bridge of Earth's thunder. Her words were broadcast to every ship, human and alien alike. "Today we did not just win a battle," she said. "We proved that no one has the right to take away another being's freedom to choose. The Ravagers who fought beside us today are no longer our enemies. They are people who chose to be better than what they were made to be." Engineer Kyung-soo was already working on plans to help the freed Ravagers. "We can teach them to build ships that don't require organic components," he said. "Technology that creates instead of destroys." The war was not completely over. There were still Ravager fleets in distant parts of the galaxy, still worlds under attack, but the collective mind was broken, split into thousands of independent groups. Some would continue the old ways, but others would choose different paths. Most importantly, the galaxy had learned to work together. Species that had been enemies or strangers now fought as allies. Trade routes reopened. Worlds that had been hiding began to communicate again. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Hyunwoo received reports from across the galaxy. Human ships were working alongside former Ravagers to rebuild destroyed worlds. Alien species were sharing technology to help everyone defend against future threats. "Sir," called out his communications officer. "Message from Earth Command. The quantum virus attack had worked once, but the Ravagers learned fast. News of the human victory spread through their collective mind like wildfire. And with it came something the hive mind had never experienced before: fear." Intelligence Officer Min Kyung sat in her small workspace aboard the modified spy ship Silent Arrow, listening to intercepted Ravager communications. What she heard made her hands shake as she typed her report. "Admiral," she transmitted to So-min on a secure channel, "the enemy is calling for massive reinforcements. I'm detecting movement from 12 different systems. They're gathering everything they have." Admiral So-min received the message while her scattered fleet regrouped in the empty space between star systems. The guerrilla tactics were working, but barely. Human ships struck at Ravager supply lines and disappeared before the enemy could respond. It was like fighting a war with mosquito bites against a giant. "How long before their reinforcements arrive?" So-min asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3, Min Kyung replied. "But Admiral, there's something else. 3 massive ships are coming, each one the size of a city. The Ravagers are calling them hive ships." On his destroyer, Commander Hyunwoo studied the intelligence reports. The hive ships were not just big warships. They were the brains of the Ravager fleet, floating cities where the collective mind was strongest. If the humans could destroy even one, it might break their whole network, he said to his bridge crew. But getting close to one of those things would be suicide. Admiral So-min made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of keeping the fleet together, she ordered it to split into even smaller groups. Single ships and tiny squadrons scattered across a dozen systems, each one hunting Ravager supply convoys and mining operations. Commander Sung-ho took the carrier Cloudwalker deep into enemy territory. His ship used stealth technology to hide from sensors, while his fighters struck at Ravager resource operations. Pilot, Nari led her squadron against a Ravager mining station that was stripping apart an asteroid belt. Her fighters came out of hyperspace in the middle of the operation, destroying 3 transport ships before the enemy knew they were there. "The mining ships have no weapons," she reported as her pilots strafed the defenseless vessels. "They're just harvesters. Destroy them and jump out." The hit-and-run attacks were hurting the Ravagers, but not enough. For every convoy the humans destroyed, 10 more continued their work. The alien war machine was too big to stop with small attacks. Meanwhile, Chief Medical Officer Hae-won made a discovery that changed everything. She was studying captured Ravager technology on the hospital ship Mercy when she found something horrible. The ships are not just metal and electronics. She reported to Admiral So-min during a secure communication. Parts of them are biological, living tissue from conquered species converted into ship components. The revelation hit the human fleet like a physical blow. The Ravagers were not just killing people and taking their planets. They were turning the victims into parts of their war machine. "Every ship they build uses the bodies of people they've murdered," Hae-won continued, her voice shaking with anger. "Children, adults, entire families processed into organic computers and power systems." Captain Jin-ho was leading a group of heavy cruisers when he got the report. He looked around his bridge at his crew, young men and women who had families back on Earth. The thought of them being turned into parts of alien ships made his blood boil. "Admiral," He transmitted to Somin. I volunteer for the Hive ship mission. Admiral Somin had been planning the attack for days. The largest Hive ship was moving toward human space, protected by a fleet of 1,500 smaller vessels. Getting close to it seemed impossible, but Engineer Kyung-soo had an idea. We build a quantum virus bomb, he explained during a secret meeting of the fleet commanders. Like what we used before, but much stronger. If we can get it inside a Hive ship and activate it, the entire collective mind in that region would collapse, finished Navigator. Era. Every Ravager ship connected to that Hive would be paralyzed, but someone would have to deliver it personally, Admiral Somin said. The bomb would have to be placed inside the Hive ship manually. It would be a one-way mission. Captain Jinho stepped forward. I'll do it. Jinho, you have a family. So do all the people the Ravagers are turning into ship parts, he interrupted. Someone has to stop them. The plan was desperate and probably hopeless, but it was their only chance. Jinho's heavy cruiser Iron Mountain would approach the Hive ship disguised as a damaged Ravager vessel. Engineer Dongmin had worked for days to modify the ship's appearance and energy signature. You'll have maybe 10 minutes inside their defense perimeter, Admiral Somin told Jinho as his ship prepared to leave. Get in, plant the bomb, and get out. Jinho knew he probably would not make it back, but he also knew that someone had to try. If I don't make it, tell my wife I was thinking of her. The Iron Mountain approached the Ravager fleet using a route that took it through an asteroid field. The ship's hull had been painted and modified to look like a damaged Ravager cruiser returning from battle. Enemy contact, whispered Jinho's communications officer as Ravager patrol ships approached. They're scanning us, the disguise held. The patrol ships let them pass, assuming they were part of their own fleet. But as they got closer to the Hive ship, Jinho saw something that made his heart sink. The Hive ship was not just big. It was enormous, 15 kilometers long and covered with thousands of weapon turrets. Smaller ships swarmed around it like insects around a hive. Sir, called out Weapons Officer Jamin from his new position on the Iron Mountain. How are we supposed to get inside that thing? Engineer Dongmin had studied the Hive ship's design from long-range sensor scans. There, he pointed to a section near the middle of the ship. Docking bays for supply vessels. If we can get close. The Iron Mountain drifted toward the docking bay, still pretending to be a damaged Ravager ship. They passed between massive weapon turrets that could have destroyed them in seconds. Jinho held his breath as his ship entered the Hive ship's hangar. Inside the hangar, they saw the full horror of Ravager technology. Ships were not just repaired there, they were grown. Biological materials were shaped and molded by alien machines, creating new vessels from the processed remains of conquered peoples. Dear God, whispered one of Jinho's crew members. Those are people. The ships are made of people. Jinho forced himself to stay calm. Plant the bomb. We're getting out of here. The quantum virus bomb was small, about the size of a briefcase. Engineer Dongmin had built it to look like a piece of Ravager equipment. They attached it to the Hive ship's main computer network deep in the ship's core. Bomb is in place, reported Dongmin. 60 seconds until detonation. The Iron Mountain tried to leave the docking bay, but alarms were starting to sound throughout the Hive ship. Someone or something had figured out that they did not belong there. They're closing the hangar doors, called out the pilot. We're trapped. Weapon turrets inside the hangar turned toward the human ship. Jinho realized they were not going to escape. All hands abandon ship, he ordered. Get to the escape pods. What about you, sir? Asked Jamin. Jinho was still in his captain's chair, his hands on the ship's controls. Someone needs to keep them busy while you get away. The escape pods launched just as the quantum virus bomb exploded. The blast was not physical but electromagnetic. It raced through the Hive ship's computer networks like lightning, destroying the quantum connections that held the collective mind together. The effect was immediate. Throughout the Ravager fleet, ships suddenly went silent. Pilots who had never thought for themselves found their minds empty of the constant guidance they had always known. Some ships simply stopped moving. Others began firing randomly, their crews panicking as they experienced individual consciousness for the first time. A few started fighting each other, no longer able to tell which ships were allies. The Iron Mountain, damaged by the bomb's electromagnetic pulse, crashed into the Hive ship's hangar wall. Captain Jinho was thrown from his chair as the ship broke apart, but he was smiling as he lost consciousness. The bomb had worked. Admiral Somin watched the results from her flagship 50 light-years away. Long-range sensors showed the massive Ravager fleet in chaos, thousands of ships drifting helplessly or firing at each other. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Yunju, "I'm getting a weak signal from Captain Jinho's escape pod." He made it out. So-Min felt relief wash over her. Jinho was alive, though badly injured. More importantly, his sacrifice had proven that the Ravagers could be beaten, but the war was far from over. There were still 2 more hive ships heading toward human space, and thousands of Ravager vessels that had not been affected by the bomb. "Send a message to all human forces," Admiral So-Min ordered. "Tell them we've found the enemy's weakness, and tell them to prepare for the real battle." In the chaos following the hive ship's destruction, something unexpected happened. Some of the Ravager ships, their connection to the collective mind severed, began transmitting surrender signals. Individual Ravagers, experiencing free thought for the first time in their species' history, were making a choice. They did not want to be part of a machine that turned other species into ship components.